It was a warm summer evening, the kind that made you feel alive and carefree. My friends, David and Mark, and I had decided to take advantage of the weather and head to our favorite bar, a cozy spot known for its relaxed atmosphere and ice-cold beer. The bar was packed as usual. People were having a good time. We were talking, laughing, and after a few beers, probably a few too many beers, David suggested an idea to go into the sea. Sunset was approaching, the beach was almost empty, and with us being a bit drunk, David's idea seemed excellent. Said and done, we stayed for about another 30 minutes before heading to the beach. The sunset was incredible, the sea reflecting the sun as it dipped below the horizon. We left our shirts and shoes on the sand and went into the water. Surprisingly, the water was quite warm, perfectly matching our mood, helping us relax even more. The sea was very calm, with barely any waves, so we decided to venture a bit further out. A slight problem with this plan was Mark, who wasn't a very strong swimmer. He could manage short distances, but when the water depth exceeded his height and he couldn't touch the bottom, he would panic a bit. But he never had any real issues, especially in the salty sea that helped him float. David, however, was an excellent swimmer, and in those moments, being drunk, he thought it would be funny to play some pranks on Mark. He would often dive underwater, grabbing Mark's leg and trying to pull him under. Yes, I know, not the best joke, but it was okay because I was also around to help Mark if he needed it and got too panicked. At one point, about 30 meters away, we saw something in the water, like a shirt or some piece of fabric. While David swam towards that area to check it out, Mark and I talked about how we would spend the remaining summer days and our future plans regarding work and other things. Suddenly, I saw Mark struggling to stay afloat. Something from underwater was pulling him down. I helped him, telling David to stop because we got his jokes, and it wasn't funny anymore if he kept repeating them. Things were about to take a strange turn, though, because after I spoke those words, I heard David's trembling voice behind me say, "Guys, this time it wasn't me." At that moment, we were gripped by an extraordinary fear, sobering us up instantly as we swam as fast as we could toward the shore. We thought it might have been a shark, even though we'd never heard of such things at that beach, especially so close to the shore. But it wasn't the case because while we were swimming, Mark told us he felt a hand on his leg, initially thinking it was David playing another prank. As I mentioned, Mark was the weakest swimmer among us, and as we tried to escape whatever it was in the water, I saw him struggling again, fighting to stay afloat. We turned back to help him, and that's when we saw a human figure underwater. It wasn't very clear because the sun was setting and the light was already dim, but I could swear I saw the face of a woman underwater, with long hair, or at least that's what it seemed like. Once we reached the shore, we caught our breath, still not fully aware of what had just happened. We were all fine in the end, but the scare was immense, and that's when I heard Mark shouting, "Look over there!" He was pointing towards a certain rock that was just above the water a bit further out. We could see a human figure from that distance waving at us. We didn't know what to think anymore. I explained to them what I saw in the water, making the incident even harder to explain and understand. Before heading home, we stayed on the beach for another 15 minutes to recover and analyze what had happened. We decided it was either a mermaid or a siren. I know it doesn't sound credible. You might say we were hallucinating because of the alcohol. But I believe Mark, especially since he wasn't in the position to play a prank on us. And according to him, he felt a hand on his leg pulling him underwater. Moreover, when he had difficulty staying afloat and we went to help him, the image I saw in the water, that feminine face with a broad smile, seemingly trying to convey a message, still lingers in my mind, making my nights much harder, causing me nightmares. I was at the airport. It was around 2 p.m., and I was getting ready to catch a flight for a short vacation with my girlfriend that weekend. We both needed a break from our daily routine, and a getaway to a beach house seemed like the perfect solution. The house we rented for 3 days looked decent, was surprisingly cheap, and the biggest advantage was its proximity to the beach, where we could hear the sea and the waves crashing on the shore. We arrived at our destination after a 5-hour flight. The first impression of the house where we would spend the next few days was quite good. The house was a bit old, but considering the price and its location, we couldn't complain. We spoke with the owner, and everything went smoothly. Although there were 2 or 3 moments when he had some strange reactions when we weren't near him. He seemed to be arguing with someone, but there were only the 3 of us in the room. We dismissed it, thinking he might have been talking on the phone or perhaps had some health issues. We quickly settled in and decided to explore the surroundings. We walked a bit on the beach, which was already deserted as it was quite late. We didn't stay long, as the journey had been quite tiring, 5 hours by plane and another 2 by car. After 20 minutes, we returned to the house. While I was sleeping with the sound of the sea in the background and the old windows moving due to the strong wind, at one point I had the impression that I heard a voice quite close to us, somewhere in the house. I assumed it was just the wind whistling through the old windows and continued my sleep. The next day was excellent. We went to the beach, the weather was perfect, the sea was warm, pleasant, and very clean, with a charming emerald color. After the beach, we went to eat at some local taverns, and everything went perfectly. However, as good as the first part of the day was, things were about to change. We got home around 9 p.m. Before going to bed, we decided to watch a bit of a TV series. While my girlfriend was in the room watching the TV, I went to the kitchen to get something to eat. At that moment, I heard the same sounds as the first night, but this time they were coming from outside. It was exactly the same sound I thought the wind had caused the previous night. The problem was that tonight the weather was perfect and there was no wind, so that option was not possible. The sound was not very clear because it was heard exactly when the sea waves hit the shore. As I looked out the window at the sea, trying to spot the source of the sound, I saw her. She was standing motionless in the water, appearing to be a female figure around 20 years old, with dark hair, dressed in black clothes. I thought I was hallucinating because it made no sense for a person to be in the sea at that hour, alone in the dark, standing still and staring directly at me. I stood for a few seconds looking at her, then I tried to call my girlfriend to show her where the noise was coming from. She didn't hear me because of the TV, so I hurriedly went to get her, and we both returned to the kitchen. When we got to the window, the girl was gone. I explained to my girlfriend, and surprisingly, although she was a bit skeptical, she believed me because I was clearly different than if I had tried to prank her. We stayed for about an hour at the window, trying to see if there were any changes in that area, but to no avail. We gave up and went to bed, but not even 30 minutes later, we heard a knock at the door. We both woke up and looked surprised because we weren't expecting anyone at such a late hour. We assumed it might be the owner, although it would be strange as he hadn't notified us. And besides, it was quite late. I looked through the peephole, and at that moment, I froze. My heart was pounding, and I could feel a cold sensation down my spine. I froze in front of the door. It was the same person I had seen in the water 2 hours earlier. I ran to the room, explained to my girlfriend what I had seen, and we started packing our things very quickly. As we were getting ready, the knocks on the door intensified, making things even scarier. We quickly exited through the back door, not checking if we forgot anything, and entered the first hotel we came across. The receptionist asked if something had happened because she saw we were a bit scared and breathing heavily after running to the hotel. I explained the situation, but she wasn't very surprised because she said she had heard similar stories about that house. According to her, it was said that 5 years ago, a girl was murdered in that house, and her body was thrown into the sea. And because of this, people believe her spirit haunts that area, and you might see her more towards the evening when the beach is deserted. I don't know what was there, whether it was real or not, but the receptionist who told us this story seemed quite convincing, and what made me believe it was possible that the person who appeared to me in the water and at the door was the same girl who died. Anyway, this event made the vacation much more interesting, but not in a good way, because even after we got to the hotel, I couldn't sleep for more than an hour. Back home, I was too curious, so I tried to find any information, any news related to that crime. What I found, however, made me regret it. The story was as real as it could be, but what surprised me and made my heart pound again was a picture of that girl. She wore the exact same black clothes, and her eyes held the same haunting look they had when I first saw her in the sea.